Let us begin. Let us turn down the music of Charles Ives. We'll come back to the music of Charles Ives. But let us begin with a discussion of musical form, continuing our discussion of musical form. Last time we talked really about three forms. We talked about verse and chorus in popular music, and we had a wonderful presentation by Frederick Evans. And I hope you came away with the following, that in dealing with verse and chorus, basically, you have the same material. You have the same musical material coming back again and again and again. With the chorus, we actually have the same text coming back again and again and again. But with the verses, although the music is the same, the text keeps changing each time. We get new strophes or new verses of text. So keep that in mind, verse, chorus, verse, chorus. Sometimes this can start with the chorus. Sometimes there's a harmonic change in here that we would call the bridge, but essentially it's the repetition of the same material over and over again in terms of the music, but in terms of the text, you get new text each time for the verses. We also talked about the simplest of all of these musical forms, ternary form, right? And that was simply this idea of statement, contrast, statement, A, B, A. Very straightforward, not too much we need do with that. Today we're going to go on and talk about theme and variations. And with regard to all three of these, I should say that all three of these forms are very old. I could go back into the Middle Ages and get a responsory of the Middle Ages that is in A, B, A form. I could go back into the Middle Ages and bring up an early 15th century English carol that's in verse and chorus form. I could go back into the Middle Ages and find you instrumental pieces that are in theme and variation form. So these three are very old. Now the fourth one that we talked about, Sonata Allegro form, is adventitious, is something constructed in the 18th century, adventitious to the 18th century. So it's something put together in some measure by Joseph Haydn and then passed on to his good friend Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. So Sonata Allegro form, this big complex musical form, is a little bit different than the other. It's a lot younger, it's a lot newer, beginning with the period of classical music, Mozart, Haydn, and Beethoven. All right, with that by way of a introduction, let's go back to Sonata Allegro form. We said that was the largest, the most complex of these musical forms. Why are we dealing with this? Well, a week from Saturday, we will go to this concert, and we will sit there and we will listen to pieces on this concert. The opening piece will be in Sonata Allegro form. It will be by Mozart. Then we will have a piece by Johannes Brahms in theme and variation form. Then we will have a symphony by Beethoven in 5 movements. It's an exception, and we'll explain why when we get to it, in 5 movements. But within those movements, we have a couple of instances of Sonata Allegro form, a couple of instances of theme and variation form, and 1 instance of ternary form. So all of these forms will be necessary. We will have to understand how these forms work in order for us to really engage that particular concert. For example, you'll be asked to write a review of that concert. And I was thinking this morning, well, a kind of mediocre review would say, well, in the middle of the first movement of the Beethoven piece, and once again, we wouldn't call it a song, in the middle of the Beethoven first movement of the Beethoven symphony, things seem to be disorganized. What I'd like to hear there is, well, in the development section of the first movement of the Beethoven Symphony, it seemed disorganized because the counterpoint was not clear, because the imitative entries of the parts was not clearly articulated. And that would be a much more specific sort of response to the music, much more educated, if you will, response to the music. So that's where we're going with all this, to kind of sort of get you to think about precisely where you are and precisely what should be happening, and then is it really happening the way it should be. Now, as said, Sonata Allegro form is the most difficult of these, and it takes a little extra time to get familiar with it. We're going to be reviewing this in section starting this evening. And don't forget, we have this model of what Sonata Allegro form is. Didn't want to put that up on the board again, did that last time. But you've got it on page 193 of your textbook, if you want that complex diagram, 193 of your textbook. So get familiar with that. And do, once again, bring your books to section this time, because we'll need them in section this time. So we've got this complex form, and I've figured out over the years the way to sort of wrap your arms around this, or get into this, understand this. And it involves the fact that music in the classical period is what we would call rhetorical music. It's doing something at every moment. It is doing, as I see it, one of four things. It's presenting a theme, so we'll have what we call a thematic function. It's moving from point A to point B. Remember with the Beethoven, that's the opening theme, and then the second theme is, well, those are both themes. That's stating something that we can sing, that we can remember. But Beethoven has to get from point A, the minor, to point B, the more lyrical major, so he writes a transition. So the second functional type here is transitional music. We want to be able to differentiate thematic music from transitional